And boy, does he deserve it. 50 years in broadcasting, the great Howie Rose. I've known him for a very long time. We'll get to his career here in a minute. Huge Met fan, one of the voices of sports phone way back in the mid-'70s and WFAN 87. He did the Mets Extra show with the manager. We got some fun with that. And they're getting ready here for the Yankees for a couple games this week. Howie, congratulations. What a run. We know we'll get to the Mets origins in a sec. Sports phone was your first big crack in 1975 when you were 21 years of age. Give me some thoughts on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, that would be the first regular job. I did a few other things that year in broadcasting, but sports phone kind of started it, and I don't think I could have envisioned almost 50 years later being in this position. But it's humbling. It's a little daunting when you think about the number of years that have passed, but it's been very rewarding too.
And Howie's going to be on WFAN a lot today to celebrate, and boy, he deserves that. I'm interested myself. I only got to know you in the late 80s. What was the big meal ticket thing for you to do between 75 and the start of FAN in 87? That 12-year period, where were you exactly?
I was doing a bunch of different things, but to take it back, in 1977, I was hired by WHN Radio to be their sports director, which meant doing on-air broadcasts in the morning and then going out and covering games at night and doing some commentary and things like that. And I probably stayed there too long. I got a little stale doing that because, I was young, living in New York, making a couple of bucks, and, I kind of got comfortable. But there were other things I wanted to do. I really wanted to do play-by-play. I never saw myself as a studio guy, never even really saw myself as a talk show guy. So in 1985, I did my first Ranger game on what was then, I think, WPAT. For whatever reason, the Rangers were on a small station in New York back then. But one thing led to another. And then in 1987, I went back to WHN knowing full well there was a pretty good chance they were going to convert to an all-sports format, which would make them the first in the country to do it. So I guess the long-winded way, Chris, to answer your question is that FAN was really the big break because it enabled me to do a lot of different things. Central, of course, to that was not only Mets Extra, but an all-sports talk show.
Not now, but then. Did you consider yourself a bigger Rangers fan or Mets fan?
I got to tell you, they were always equal passions, Chris. I mean, those two teams, when I was a kid, probably like the Giants were for you, those two teams dictated my moods for that particular day. Or if it was during the hockey season and the Rangers won a big game on a Sunday night and didn't play again until Wednesday, I'd be walking on air until Wednesday, That's the effect that sports teams have on us when we adopt them. And I was fully invested in both of them. And so that's why I say when I go back, 50 years now and think that those were the two teams that, as I say, controlled my moods. And I've had the chance to work for both of them over the years. I mean, that's almost impossible when you think about it, but I'm very blessed to have done so.
And Howie is a great, obviously, Mato, Rangers won when they beat the Devils in that 7th game. Don't forget that. That's an iconic call. And Howie is an excellent, I've picked up a lot of things from him over the years just listening to him. An excellent talk show host. Let's not forget that. Mets Extra.
That's scary. What could you have learned from me? Other than what not to do.
Plenty. Mets Extra, which is a huge show in the late 80s, which Howie hosted every night at 6 to 7 or thereabouts before the Met game, was a big show because Howie had the manager on for 10 minutes every night. So if you wanted to get a thought from the manager on last night's game, Howie was the place to go. I bring it up now because one of the famous interviews that Howie ever did was with Bud Harrelson. Howie had to ask the logical, fair journalistic questions. Bud, who had taken over for Davey Johnson, got all upset. And even Dave Anderson wrote a huge column about it in the New York Times. Howie, I hate to go. I know Bud's your hero, but that was a famous one that you did on that great show, Mets Extra. How about that for a second? Go ahead.
Well, thanks, Chris. I mean, Buddy will always be a friend and was even then. And the truth of the matter is, it wasn't so much Buddy quitting the radio show. It was Buddy having been under enormous pressure from the Mets front office in those days between Frank Cashin and Al Harrison that they had become, meaning the front office, so tired of Davey's independence, and especially the fact that Davey and I got on so well, and that Davey answered all those questions that you alluded to a little while ago. I mean, I took the attitude with that show that I had to approach it the same way any beat print reporter would, because I'd be laughed out of town if I didn't. And once Davey grew to trust me, and it didn't take very long, we had some pretty interesting conversations because Davey could be very critical of the front office when he wanted to. Well, Frank and Al had had enough of that. And so Buddy was under enormous pressure not to do anything controversial. And it just kind of got to him because of the pressure that he was under. And I told him it probably wouldn't look good if he quit. I understood because the previous winter or after the previous season, I said, "You want to do this next year?" And he said, "Yes." I wasn't really sure that he did, but that was never really Buddy. It was the front office, and it never affected my relationship with Bud.
Which Met championship means more to you, 69 or 86?
1969, because I was 15 years old. And I would submit there is no better age for a fan to experience his or her team winning a world championship, particularly when it was as unexpected as 1969 was, as being a teenager. And, for me, it was 15, and the rules were different then. There was no free agency. You felt that you were growing up with certain players. And the core of that 69 team had been with the Mets for several years. So I was fully invested in them. And by 1986, the difference was, I was, 32 years old. And it's never quite the same as it is when you're a kid. But remember, 69 was a complete surprise right up until Cleon Jones caught that last fly ball, ironically off the bat of Davey Johnson. 1986, and you'll remember this, was a relief. I mean, they won 108 games during the regular season. They dominated the sport. And if they didn't win the World Series that year, people were going to look at that season somehow as a failure. So when they finally closed it out, it was as much a relief as it was a cause for jubilation, which, in fact, it was, too.
Your famous last thing, Howie. I know Tom Seaver was your idol, and he came on here a couple times there early on in High Heat. But you did the big spot with him that was a long one, I believe, when he got into the Hall of Fame. And Tom could be prickly, and you handled that, absolutely superbly. That has to be a career highlight. One of them. Go ahead. Let me hear.
It was, Chris. It was one of the most memorable nights of my career, because I didn't know Tom real well then. I'd known him a little bit. And I had asked him if he would come on and allow us to celebrate his career with him. I think it was the day after he was elected to the Hall of Fame by the largest mandate to that point in Hall of Fame history. And he said, yeah, and we booked, basically a half hour. And then we played a little pre-recorded tribute that we'd made for him. And I say we, meaning Dove Kramer and Eric Spitz back at WFAN. But anyway, he decided to stay on for another half hour. And it was magical. To me, it was one of the most memorable nights I ever spent on the air. And I'm telling you, Chris, here we are all these years. Well, not all these years later. He's only gone, 3.5, going on 4 years. It's still impossible for me to think of Tom Seaver in the past tense.
Yep. Yeah, Howie, you've meant a lot to a lot of people, especially the Met fans and the Ranger fans. I've always loved you. Thanks for a few minutes here today. Have a big day. You deserve it. Appreciate it.
So nice of you to have me on, Chris. All the best to you and the family.